even in the quietest cities, there are places that are whispered about after midnight. It was an old drainage tunnel under an abandoned factory. Local teenagers called it the Den of Shadows. They said you can't go in there after sunset, otherwise whoever's watching will follow you home. No one believed in this tale until people started disappearing. I was 17 when my friend Clara and I decided to dispel the myth. It all started with her older brother. The week before, he went to the tunnel with friends to shoot a video for TikTok. They came back without him. The police searched the tunnel, but found only his sneakers stuck in the grate. The official version is escape from home. But Clara knew her brother wasn't like that. We collected lanterns, a map, and a can of pepper spray. On the way, we bought a cheap EMF detector on eBay. Clara had read that ghosts create interference. I laughed until we went down into the tunnel. The dampness hit my face like a wet towel. Mold covered the walls, and water mixed with something oily squelched underfoot. After 5 minutes of walking, Clara found a battered notebook on the floor. Inside there are children's drawings, black men with 2 long arms, circled with a red marker. On the last page there is a trembling inscription: "He takes those who look into the dark." It's a joke. I tried to joke, but my voice cracked. The tunnel forked. We chose the left branch and came up against a grate. Beyond it was a room with mattresses, empty cans, and ropes tied to pipes. Clara's brother's earring was lying on the floor. "It's a trap," she whispered. "Someone." A light switch clicked somewhere behind them. The lights went out. We huddled together, pointing our lanterns into the darkness. The beam picked out a silhouette, a tall man in a black jumpsuit and a gas mask. He stood 10 meters away, not moving. "Hey!" I shouted. He jerked his head like a puppet and strode towards us. We ran. Lanterns jumped on the walls, blinding the eyes. Heavy footsteps could be heard behind him, not running, but the calm, measured gait of a predator confident in its prey. The tunnel was narrowing. We turned into a passage that wasn't on the map and came across a door. The rusty sign read, "Service exit." "It is forbidden." Clara hit the lock with a spray can, and the door gave way. Behind it is a staircase to the surface. "Hurry up." She pushed me forward. We jumped out into the wasteland behind the factory. There wasn't a soul around, only the wind was blowing debris across the ground. I turned around to slam the door and saw him standing downstairs with his head thrown back. The gas mask was now removed, but the face was hidden by a black mask with a slit for a mouth. "Run!" Clara screamed. We raced across the field, stumbling over rocks. A hoarse laugh could be heard behind him. When she was 100 meters from the street, Clara stumbled and fell. I pulled on her arm, but a second figure emerged from the darkness, a woman in the same mask, with a knife. "Dear birds," she growled, "you've woken up dinner." The woman lunged at Clara, but she jerked sharply to the side, and the blade pierced the air a centimeter from her neck. I grabbed a rock and threw it at the attacker. The blow landed on her shoulder, and she howled, dropping the knife. We rushed forward, legs buckling, lungs burning. There were screams behind us. They weren't running, but shouting after us, as if mocking us. We ran out onto the road, under the light of a street lamp. The neon of a gas station sign was flashing in the distance. I took out my phone, 2% charge. I dialed 911, but the connection was interrupted. Clara, limping, pointed to the truck at the factory gate. The driver was smoking by the open trunk. "Help me!" I shouted, waving my arms. The man turned around. The factory's logo flashed on his jumpsuit. He smiled too broadly. "Run!" Clara tugged at my sleeve. We turned into an alley littered with dumpsters. I heard a dog on a chain running around the fence. Clara jumped onto the tank lid and climbed over the fence. I followed her, tearing my jeans on the rusty wire. The dog snarled, but we pressed ourselves against the wall, merging into the shadows. A minute later, two men entered the alley, a man with a gas mask on his lower back and a woman rubbing her bruised shoulder. "Where are they?" "Stop it," she hissed. "They didn't go far. Check the garages." When their footsteps had died away, we climbed back over. Clara pulled her keys out of her pocket. Her brother always wore them on a keychain with an LED flashlight. Among the keys was a chip from the parent BMW. "The car's in the movie theater parking lot," she whispered. 5 minutes of running. We crept along the walls, crouching. The headlights of a passing car illuminated a man in overalls. He was standing in the middle of the street, slowly turning his head like a touch sensor. We ducked into a doorway and crawled through a broken window into an empty store. There were empty packages on the floor, and there was a musty smell. "Here," Clara pointed to the back door. We went out into the parking lot. Her BMW was in the corner. Her heart was pounding when the chip in her trembling fingers finally unlocked the door. They started the engine and drove out onto the road. A figure flashed in the mirror. A woman ran out from around the corner, brandishing a knife. "Call the police," Clara shouted, stepping on the gas. I dialed 911. The operator asked for the address, but I didn't know where we were going. Suddenly, a roar burst into the cabin. A truck with headlights at full brightness was ramming us from behind. The BMW was pulled over to the side of the road. The head hit the glass. "Come out." Clara kicked the door down. We ran into the field, towards the silhouette of the water tower. The truck stopped, and 3 people got out of the cab. A man in a gas mask was carrying an axe. "They know the area," Clara panted. "Let's run to the forest." Thorny branches whipped at his face. We tripped over a ditch and rolled down. The water was knee-deep, but we walked bent over. Laughter sounded from above. "I see you," the woman shouted. Her flashlight picked out a concrete storm drain pipe from the darkness. We ducked inside. The pipe led under the road. At the other end is the river. A boat dock, a couple of speedboats. "Steal a boat." I pointed to the nearest one. Clara cut the rope with a jackknife. We pushed off, and the current carried us down. The headlights came on the shore. They stood there, watching. "Call me again." I started, but the phone was lost somewhere in the running. Clara took a notebook out of her brother's pocket. On the last page, under the children's drawings, there was a map. Someone marked a patch of forest 20 miles away with a red cross. "This is their base," she said. "There may be others." At dawn, we reached the gas station. The seller called the sheriff. While we were waiting, I noticed a scratch on Clara's arm, like a wire. But when she rolled up her sleeve, we saw the injection marks. "It's not mine," she whispered. Suddenly, she clutched her head and fell to the floor. Foam started coming out of his mouth. The salesman was shouting into the phone, "Ambulance, now." At the hospital, the doctors said it was poisoning. But when I entered the room, Clara was sitting on the bed, staring at the wall. "They injected me with something in the tunnel," she said. "When I fell." A nurse whispered outside the door, "Patient 214, code 34. I looked out. The nurse was leaving, but there was a piece of paper on the floor. There was a painting on it, and I looking out of a pipe. Clara was trembling, clutching the edge of the hospital sheet. Her eyes darted around the walls as if she was trying to find hidden cameras. I went to the window. The parking lot below was empty, except for a van with the cleaning company's logo. A man in a uniform was unloading boxes, too slow for a working morning. "We can't stay here," Clara whispered. "They know where we are." We slipped out of the room, crouching behind the nurse's counter. The elevator was too risky. We went down the stairs for the staff. On my way out of the basement, I grabbed someone's robe and hat and threw it over Clara. Her face was gray, her lips were blue. We stole bicycles from the gas station across the street. Clara could barely pedal, but she stubbornly remained silent. On the way, She showed me a map from her notebook. The Red Cross was near the old dam. My brother said that there are underground tunnels. Maybe a lab. Her voice trailed off. They are. They're testing something on humans. The road turned into a dirt road, then into a trail. The dam appeared suddenly, a concrete monster covered in graffiti. Behind it, the entrance to the technical tunnels gaped. The lock was cut off. It smelled of chemicals inside. The walls were dotted with wires connected to car batteries. We walked past rooms with mattresses, cages, tables littered with syringes. There was a calendar with dates on one of the walls. The last mark was yesterday. "Hello, rats," said a voice from the darkness. A masked woman came around the corner, holding a drill with a sharp drill instead of a drill bit. She was followed by two men, one with a video camera, the other with a meat cleaver. "You've ruined our dinner," the woman said. "Now you will become a material." We rushed back, but a truck with headlights blocked the way. A man in a gas mask got out of the cockpit. Clara pushed me into a side passage, a narrow hole in the ventilation. "Run! Stop it," she shouted, grabbing a jar of flammable liquid from the table. I crawled a meter when I heard an explosion. Fire burst out of the tunnel, illuminating the screaming shadows. Clara didn't follow me. I walked through the woods for 2 hours until I came across a hunting lodge. There was a 90s radio station inside. I accidentally switched the frequency, and a man's voice was on the air. "We repeat, quarantine zone number 34. All samples are infected. Eliminate the carriers before spreading." An engine whined outside the window. Through the fogged-up glass, I saw a truck with a factory logo. The bags were moving in the back, and someone's hand in handcuffs that I held my breath, pressing myself to the floor. The truck stopped a meter from the porch. The cabin door creaked, and someone's boots slapped the mud. Through a gap in the boards, I saw a gas mask, the one with the black mask. He looked around the cabin, then kicked the door. The blow landed a centimeter from my head. "There's no one here," the man muttered, turning to his partner. "Check the tracks by the river." When their footsteps had died away, I crawled over to the radio station. I found a folder marked Top Secret among the old papers on the table. Inside are reports on the hybrid project, experiments to create a combat virus that affects the nervous system. The subjects are homeless, runaways, and those whom society will not notice. A photo of Clara's brother lay on top of a stack of documents marked Sample 12, Aggression Intensified, Control Lost. In the corner of the room was a backpack with a flask, a knife and a map. I grabbed it and climbed out the window. The forest was buzzing with rain, which turned the ground into a swamp. A voice hissed over the radio in my backpack. "Group 4, block the road to Highway 21. Carrier 34 is in touch." My driver's license photo flashed on the next page of the report. Signature, Carrier 34, infection confirmed. Liquidate before 1800 hours. The rain hid the tracks, but did not muffle the barking of the dogs. I ran towards the highway, tripping over the roots. Suddenly, the ground went out from under my feet. I rolled into a ravine, hitting my back on a rock. In the pocket of her backpack, she felt a syringe with a yellow liquid and a note, antidote. 12 o'clock. Lanterns flickered over the ravine. The dogs were barking closer and closer. I stuck the needle into my thigh, squeezing out the contents. Pain shot through his body like an electric shock. My vision blurred, but my feet carried me forward on their own. The highway was deserted. I hid in the back of an abandoned pickup truck, covering myself with a tarp. Brakes screeched outside. "She's here somewhere," a woman's voice said. "Check every car." The footsteps approached. Someone yanked the tarp. I clutched the knife, preparing to jump, but suddenly a shot rang out. The body fell to the asphalt with a crash. "Run!" A stranger in a khaki mask shouted, pushing me towards his jeep. He pushed me into the back seat and took off. The lights of the chase flashed in the mirror. "Who are you?" I croaked. He took off his mask, revealing the scars on his face. "They think I'm dead. The antidote slows down the virus, but it doesn't stop it. You have 10 hours. He handed me the phone. "There are coordinates there. The laboratory where the serum is made. The explosives are in the trunk." "Why are you helping me?" "Because you're their target now. And my chance to burn this shit." "Listen carefully," he tossed the radio at me. "There are 20 infected people on a chain inside. Set them free, and they'll do the rest. And you? I'll distract them." He came out shooting into the air. The trucks turned in his direction. I crawled under the wire and reached the door with a combination lock. There are traces of blood on the panel. Someone typed the code, 0412, date of the first report from the folder. The door opened. It smelled of bleach and rot. There are cameras with laboratories and cages on the monitors. I found the control room, connected the explosives to the timer. 10 minutes. The rumbling outside intensified. It sounded on the radio. "Sample 17 has been neutralized." A siren sounded in the hallway. The cage doors opened automatically. The explosive timer was flashing red, 8:34. The siren was wailing, merging with the roar of the infected. They were bursting out of their cages, people with distorted faces, ulcerated hands, and bloodshot eyes. One of them, a teenager in torn hospital clothes, stared at me. His fingers twitched convulsively, as if he was trying to remember how to grab. I ran for the exit, tripping over hoses labeled biohazard. Suddenly, the door to the hallway slammed shut. The panel lit up, emergency lockout. A masked woman appeared behind the glass, the one with the knife. She put her finger to her throat in a die gesture. "Open it." I punched the armored glass. She turned on the valve on the wall. Yellow gas poured out of the ceiling. I pulled the edge of my sweater over my face and ran back. The infected were rushing down the corridor, knocking each other down. One of them crashed into the wall, breaking his arm, but not stopping. The jeep turned sharply into a clearing. Ahead, behind the barbed wire, was a bunker. "There are no innocents." He laughed, bleeding profusely. "Do you already feel how he is changing you? Rounded corners of conscience. Pragmatism of the highest order." A bullet from his pistol penetrated the nitrogen tank. Fog filled the room. I ran outside, where the crowd was photographing the black smoke from the ventilation. No one noticed how I disappeared among them. In the dead man's pocket was a key card with the logo of the pharmaceutical corporation and the address of the warehouse. The phone vibrated, a new message from an unknown number. "They know you're here. Run. But remember, the further you go, the more you become them." I looked at my reflection in the window. The woman with my face was smiling at me with a different, too sharp expression. That I entered the warehouse under the cover of the night. The huge refrigerators hummed like animals in cages. There were thousands of ampoules of yellow liquid on the shelves, hybrid. Party 9-inch. A warning was flashing on the monitor at the entrance, spraying at 2 hours and 15 minutes. The key card opened the server room. Inside there are computers with data on supplies, government orders, military bases, water supply tanks. The virus was supposed to mix with the rain, turning the city into an incubator. I connected the explosives left over from the bunker to the cooling system. I set the timer for 5 minutes. I took out the last syringe with a retarder. It could give me time to get out. But the hand wavered. What if this is evolution? The voice in my head sounded like my own. Floodlights came on in the warehouse. 3 men in black gear stepped out of the shadows, their faces impassive as killer robots. "Give up, sample 34. You can't avoid deactivation," the woman said, aiming a pistol with a silencer. I pressed the timer button. "You don't understand. They'll make monsters out of you too." "We are monsters," she fired. The bullet pierced his shoulder. I fell behind the server counter, clutching at my bloody wound. The pain finally came, sharp, pure, human. Timer, 3 minutes and 12 seconds. I climbed out through the ventilation to the roof. The explosion tore through the night, throwing out a column of fire above the cranes. Glass and metal rained down into the docks. A black sedan was waiting for me on the ground. A man in thin, rimmed glasses got out of it, the one from the hybrid project reports. Brilliant, he clapped his hands. You destroyed the warehouse, but the data is already in the cloud. And an explosion is a great reason for martial law. I tried to stand up, but my legs gave out. Why? All of this? To replace chaos with order, he straightened his tie. Fear unites better than any ideals. And you are the best sample. Even infected, you're fighting for the good. How touching. From his pocket he took out a pistol and an ampoule with green gas. The choice is yours, the bullet or the eternal service of evolution. I looked at the lights of the city. There, in the apartments, people were watching the news about the terrorist attack, ready to give up their freedom for safety. The children slept, not knowing that tomorrow's rain would change them at the genetic level. I'm not going to be your argument, I whispered and grabbed the ampoule. The gas hit my lungs like 1,000 needles. The world swam. The last thing I heard was his chuckle. You're wrong. You will. A week later, an article appeared in the newspapers. Terrorist attack prevented, a lone heroine died saving the city. My photo was smiling from the front page, even though I had never posed for this picture. And then it started to rain. People put their faces under the warm drops, not noticing how their fingers convulsively clenched into fists. Somewhere in an underground bunker, a man with glasses was completing a report. Stage 2 is completed. We're starting the selection process. But this is not my story anymore.